horrendous poster that was in the London subway that was saying like they were looking forward to going back to their boss's jokes. Like, I know that's definitely not the case in our organisation, but you know there will be things that we're all missing, and we're wondering how COVID's changed your expectations of what an office should provide. And we're also wondering, especially for freelancers and for organisations, what kind of services or what do you want to find in spaces when we all go back to them next spring, summer? So that's kind of where we're at. And if everybody's okay and anybody wanted to change their names is taking that chance, then I'd like just to pass on to Becca now to show you a little bit about what we've got planned at the Kinning Park complex.
Okay. So I will just sort out sharing my screen. So can you all see a presentation? It means I've lost half your faces, but I'll try and cover. So I am Becca. I run New Practice. So we're an architecture practice, and I run it with my business partner, Mark, and a small team. And we're based between Glasgow and London, mostly Glasgow at the moment, and for the whole of 2020, thanks to pandemics. But I guess I'm not going to talk a lot about what we do. But I'm going to start by thinking about the work we've been doing for Kinning Park. So we've been working with Kinning Park Complex since 2017. So we started off doing a feasibility study and really kind of reassessing what the brief needed to be for the space. So our key aim is to work with buildings that already exist, work within existing structures, to make them work better. So this is not about, you know, fancy new architecture. Really, I think there's about 3 or 4 new walls. This is about making what's already there the best that it can possibly be. So we started off with a brief that balanced this sort of like user needs against the priorities of the space, and a lot of this comes down to funding. You know, the things that the number one were the things we needed to fund first, going down the list. So how do we balance those two sets of sometimes challenging, you know, compromises to make to get to the space that would do what it needed to do for Kinning Park and its users. We always say we like to start projects with a party. In this case, this project started long before we were involved. You all know the history of Kinning Park. You know, it started with a lock-in. It started with a really embedded community organisation, which is not something you always have. And I think that's been a real power for this space. And they also have this great building. So this is not actually the section of the building. This is the revision before the one that was built, because the built drawings have been lost by the city council. So this is not quite right, but it's nearly right. It's good enough for us to get some information from. But the building itself, although, you know, it'd gone through a whole bunch of dilapidation, actually it's okay. A lot of it is in good nick. It's got what our structural engineer likes to call good bones. It's trying its hardest, even though bits of it are falling apart. And for me and for this project, I think the potential is in the acts that this building will hold. The building is a byproduct of that. The building is a thing that holds those actions. It's not the star of the show. And that's the approach we've really taken to the architecture. So, I mean, the building itself is beautiful. It has this amazing double helix staircase, which I'm very excited that we'll be able to uncover. It's got, you know, really good internal finishes, the tiles and the timber paneling all throughout, which we'll be keeping, really give it a sense of being a school, being itself as a building. So we've taken this approach of adaptive reuse, trying to make the most of that heritage. It's not a listed building, so that gives us some leeway, but we're trying to take a heritage approach, a conservation approach, and our main aims are about functional, flexible and accessible space, both for community and for workspace, across all 3 stories. So this is what it looked like. It doesn't anymore, because now it's got scaffold around it, and all of that moss has been cleaned off very recently, so the stonework on that facade is looking pretty great, and it'll look much the same when it's done, a kind of cleaner, shinier version of what is already there. And I wanted to put this in. This is something that we also say about what we do, and I think it's really important for me to understand that as an architect, my job isn't to go in and bluster and tell everyone what they want and what they need. It's to listen to them and go along on a journey with everyone. And I think that's the journey we've been having with Kinning Park for the last 3 years, and that will continue into next summer and hopefully beyond. So what are we doing? I've got some plans. I'm not going to talk through them in great detail because I don't think they're the most useful way to show you what we're proposing. I've got some visuals slightly later on. But the main purpose of our work is to kind of centralize the idea of accessibility. So a new lift it's one of the kind of key design things. We've spun everything else off this lift that allows us to get people level access all the way through the building, including the mezzanine levels. On the ground floor, that means we've made quite big changes to the internal layout, but we'll get a bigger kitchen, a hall that's the same size or slightly larger, and reorganizing a lot of the service uses, toilets, stores, plant room, into a kind of service core behind the lift there. And we'll have a formal reception, which will be nice, somewhere you can enter the building and then move on from. Onto the first floor, again, we maintain that first floor hall, this kind of big gathering space, which have a slightly different use to the downstairs. And then we start to get into the workspaces, so adding in studios and workshops. And for us, one of the key rooms on this floor is this quiet room, so a space that is really multifunctional. So for prayer, for breastfeeding, a place for neurodiverse users of the building to retreat to and to use as a space for recovery and thought and break. And for us, that's something that we're putting quite a lot of effort into making sure that space will work, because it's a busy building and it always has been, and it's quite a noisy building with huge open spaces. So it's really important, I think, for everyone just to have a space to curry in and calm down a bit. And then the top floor will remain completely workspace. So we've got 3 large shared studios and then 1 smaller studio, pretty much as is. The largest of the shared studios is 2 of the rooms knocked together to allow us to get that lift in. And I mean, I love this drawing. It's a drawing that is only useful in the context of kind of designing the building. No one will ever see this view. But for me, what I really love about it is trying to get a sense of how we want to bring wayfinding into the building. We want to use color. We want to find ways to allow people to move through the building that don't require, written signage, so you can kind of intuitively figure out the building in a way that I don't think is quite possible at the moment, partly because of the staircase. But yeah, so this is I'm going to show you some existing and then some visuals. So this is where we are in the entrance, and this is what we hope it will become. So opening up that staircase, and then the introduction of the lift as that kind of first thing that you see. So that's how you kind of can move around the building. The existing hall, well, a few years ago version of the hall, to what we expect that space to be, with a kind of bustling community cafe at one end, and then more flexible partitions allowing us to break up that space and use it in a number of different ways. The top floor, so all of this boxing around the staircase will be gone, and we will get this beautiful view, so the whole of the circulation area will become a communal space for gathering and for use throughout, even where you've got, as on the case of the second floor, private studios that general members of the public, building users might not have access to. So where we're at, this is where we're at. So we've kind of pulled back quite a lot of on the top floor, a lot of the damp and rotten timbers and the plasterwork up there that was cracking and crumbling. We've started on the roof repairs, and we're kind of getting most of the way through that. So all of this slate now has been taken away. The roof light is out, and we're starting to put the slate back on after fixing the sarking and all the work underneath that. So this is the roof light on the left. This is the roof light off. It's extremely blue because of the tarpaulin, but it was a great space to go up, and I've had a look at all of those timber trusses on that top floor, and they all look really good. So they're going to be beautiful when they're painted. And starting to think about how we reuse things within the building. So every single door, I don't know if you can quite see it on this blue door, has a tiny sticker on it that says, this is to be reused in room number 2 and to be hung the other way. So we're trying to reuse as much as we can from what exists within the building. So that includes, we're going to reuse all of the toilets. So it's a great conversation I've been having with the builders, and how we reuse the doors and how we reuse things that exist in a way that generally our contractor doesn't think of. So that's why we've got stickers on everything at the moment, so they try not to remember not to throw everything out. And the same is true for items that we can't reuse. So these window frames, we're trying to find some way that we can incorporate them within either an external space or as an archive of the building. So trying to understand how we might just keep records of what the building has been, and who's kind of touched it and who's been involved. And we're starting, we've now demolished all of the internal partitions that we're going to demolish. And we're starting to see rooms kind of come together. So on the right there this used to be the hall and the music room, and that will now form one part of the hall, one end of the new hall. So starting to see these rooms kind of, begin to form themselves, and get a real sense on the left of every colour that's ever gone into the building, and ever been put. Some of them are choices, and some of them have been made because that was the available paint. So we're trying to pick and choose which of the colours that exist within the building, which of the histories that we want to maintain and celebrate, and which we're kind of happy to be like, that wasn't really a choice. That was a moment of, we only had pink paint, right? That was pink. So we're trying to figure out how we do that, and which of the stories we pick up as threads to continue. So the top floor right now, and the stair, we've uncovered the whole of the helix staircase, and it's absolutely transformational in terms of the building. It's my favorite thing we've done so far, and already the building, we're a couple of months into a 9-month building program, and already walking up that staircase feels a lot more like the building is supposed to feel. You can kind of see people on the other staircase. You get a sense of the entire area that you're within, and I really love it. The contractor laughs at me because every time I go on site, I smile when I see it, and he just thinks I'm being ridiculous. But we're also starting to see little marks about how the building was used. So all of the boxing in around the staircase, they literally just hacked up the banister and screwed it in. Like there wasn't necessarily a care or an understanding. So again, we're trying to think about how we might incorporate these marks and these like points to say, this is what happened, or make repairs that are visible repairs. So we're not pretending that this never happened. We're not going to hide this, but say, this is as a visible repair, what might we do? So that's conversations I'm trying to think of right now. And the top floor, it's already beginning to look so much more, before the scaffold went in, so much more like that visual at the end, and I just at the beginning. And I'm just really excited about this space particularly, and what that might bring to the building as a kind of informal space for people coming together, even just to have a cup of tea and sit in there will be beautiful. And I've got this lovely photo of Rachel, which Claire snapped and the last time we visited, which is, we will see the building when it's all better, and it is getting there, and it's going to be beautiful. And summer 2021 is when we hope to open it. So we are still on programme for that. And that is me. That's what we are doing.
Thanks very much, Becca. I was getting a wee bit emotional there as well, actually. To be honest, it's been a bit of a journey, and so quite happy to see it kind of coming. I've yet to be in one of these sessions where anybody actually did want to ask a question, but does anybody have any questions for Becca? I know Kirsty had asked Becca if it's okay to speak on your behalf, Kirsty. If you could, can we make the slides available?
Yes, absolutely. I'll send them through to Claire, and she can distribute them as required.
Yeah, fantastic. Does anybody else have any questions for Becca, or for anybody kind of on the design or anything that we've seen there?
Was there, Becca, anything that really surprised you when you went in? Or you were going in with eyes open, or how that building was going to be?
So there have been a few kind of original building things that have kind of come as surprises in various ways. So there's the original Edwardian heating system is formed of 15 internal chimneys and vents which connect the basement to the roof, which is a really great little fire trap. Fabulous fun. So we've just been dealing with how we might balance. We need to obviously seal that and manage that and keep it safe. But how do we balance that against, we don't want to fill those with putty or with concrete, because we don't think the foundations will manage it. So trying to find the kind of light touch solution that gets a safe building. And we found out last week that the mullions aren't actually attached. So we are going to attach them. Everyone, it's going to be fine. We're going to attach them to the building. They're not going to fall off. But that was last week's great big surprise, is that they've just been there by luck and gravity working in our favour for the last 120 years. But that's, you know, could have gone wrong at any point.
I'm not. I'm about a third of the age of the building, and gravity's not working in my favour. So I'm pretty we've been quite lucky, Caroline, because usually, I'm led to believe. Not this is the first time that I've ever been involved in a renovation project, certainly one of this size. But usually, I'm kind of led to believe that you're more likely to find, kind of nasty surprises of the type that Becca's just mentioned, which end up costing you a lot of time and money as well. But we've been quite lucky that a lot of the surprises that we've had so far have been quite pleasant. That we expected to find a little bit more rot than we have done. We're kind of thinking that we were probably lucky, and that there were big gaping holes in the roof, and so the internal rain garden just that the water fell straight through the holes rather than down the sides of the walls.
It does appear, as Martin says, that the timber's never been able to dry, so it's never been able to get rotten. So that's a bonus.
Good.
So it's just been wet for so long that actually it's never got dry. Getting dry to wet is your problem. So we've just had wet, and that's fine. We can deal with that. We can dry it out and repaint it and refinish that wood. But there's a lot of those sorts of things where we have been quite lucky, or we've been, or the building itself is stronger and more resilient than we kind of give it credit for, which is good.
I don't know if that also works for levels, but it's sobering up that gets you. It's not the continued drinking.
Exactly.
As if you had a question there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, Becca. I'm really interested in the idea of non-written wayfinding, and I just wondered if you could talk a wee bit more about the ideas for that.
Yeah, so this is something we're still kind of exploring and getting through, but what we've been looking at is, obviously there's a number of different user groups in the building, and everyone will find their way in different, through different means. But we're really keen that everyone will be able to understand. And one of the ways we're looking at that is about colour. So by colour code, effectively colour coding the floors and using colour as a guider. So for public doors, our plan is for them to be coloured per floor. So at the moment we're thinking we've gone for a very food flavoured colour palette. So at the moment, sage on the ground floor and salmon in the middle and mustard on the top. I think it sounds like a nice dish. So trying to think about how, on the ground floor, the doors you want people to be drawn to would be that sage colour. So they're kind of that's the hall and the cafe. And then as you go up, and that means we can start thinking about how we add in lines or arrows through the building as a way of just aiding that without having to write a sign that says studios up to the top floor. You can use that as a color palette. So we've been looking at a lot of examples that don't use or use color supplementary to written signage, and a lot of examples, and particularly things like hospital signage and care facility signage that doesn't use written language at all, and does kind of draw you through spaces with either lines or color or pattern. And so that's what we're hoping to apply through the building, but make it still a nice place to be. I'm really aware we don't want it to be flashing bright colors everywhere either. So it's that balance always with this building of we need certain we need to make sure that every user group can access the building in an equal way. So that for us has been the key way of exploring it. I hope that answers it. It's still a kind of work in progress. So
don't want to chop the flow, folks, because after saying that nobody asked questions, we've got some great questions on the go. But we are lucky enough to be joined by Claire Carpenter from the Melting Pot today, and what's quite a symbolic day for the Melting Pot, as it's going through a kind of period of chrysalis into turning into something even more beautiful than it has been for so many years. So with that, and with promises that I made to Claire about how much of our time we would take up today, if it's okay, I'll give some space back again for questions at the end. But I'd like to kind of pass over to Claire just now to tell you a little bit about their journey at the moment.
Hello folks, hello. This really is a very strange day. I'm sat on the floor, is it very echoey? I'm sat on the floor of the meeting room, it's empty, and today is the last day of clearing out our 14-year journey of operating in Low Street. It's 2.5 years to get here, 14 years, and today's the day we finish moving out. So it's exciting, I have to say it's exciting, and seeing your photos of what's happening at Kinning Park Complex is hilarious, because it's like, oh yeah, back to building, we're back at building basics. An empty building is full of promise, and personally, I know you love design, so, but I've been asked to speak a little bit about insights on what's happening in the co-working world, not just what's going on in my particular co-working business. A little bit about what's happened with COVID and where the future might take us. So if it's okay, I'm going to speak to that. I mean, we all know that COVID has changed things forever. It's not a short-term thing, it's a long-term thing. How we work, where we work, the ways that we can work has just been accelerated. So before COVID, there was remote working and flexi working, but let's face it, how many people did you know who actually were allowed or encouraged to do flexible or remote work? Whereas suddenly 99%, well, that's not true, 99% of people who work with computers are encouraged to go and work from home. Whatever space you've got in your own home, go there, it's safe. Now we know that that's not entirely true. Safety is a relative thing, and yes, it's safe for disease, but it's not safe for mental health issues, loneliness, or lack of fragmenting of organisations. There's issues. What will happen in the future, and everyone's talking about it, is a blended work environment where there's sort of 3 H's: the work from home, the work from a hub, and the work from the HQ. So we'll think about these things as talk through. It's like, what role will Kinning Park play? Will it be an HQ? Will it be a local hub? And how can it retain the sense of spirit and community that is your vision for it? So another insight from what's been happening this year and how it will affect Kinning Park is about localism and the sort of national playing field. We know that the cities are faring worse than the towns. I can only see 4 people on the screen because I'm on my mobile, but cities are doing badly in comparison to towns and villages. They're pretty safe out there, whereas Glasgow is doing much better than Aberdeen, Inverness, or indeed Edinburgh, which is going through a very shitty time. And it's to do with its economics and where people live. And I think Kinning Park's really lucky where it's situated. It's got a lot of residential areas and it's close to the public transport links. And let's just hope that in a couple of years' time, those public transport links will be strengthened, that people feel confident to return to them and use them again. So although if we think about hub as home, hub as HQ, and hub as HQ, hub, and working from home, where does Kinning Park fit into that mix for its future tenants? What is it that's going to attract people? We know that organisations are going to encourage flexible working practice and remote working practice. The genie is out the bottle and it's going to continue. But how can Kinning Park and other co-working hubs be a magnet? How can people feel safe to go to an external environment? We know that people are desperately seeking, but they're not allowed yet, to have somewhere to go where they can develop their professional network where they can not talk to their wife and children, please can I have a conversation with somebody else, or if they live alone, actually have a conversation with another adult. We know that that is happening, but we're not at that tipping point yet, and I feel really pleased for Kinning Park that you're likely to be opening at a time when the need and awareness of co-working is just going to bubble to the surface. It's a very exciting time. It won't be till spring into summer next year, but you'll be there ready to pick up the newfound market that will emerge. The question is, how do you differentiate yourself from flexible workspace and build that sense of community and cohesion? We know that working from home isn't an option for everybody, but that also some people have loved this experiment. Personally, I don't know, you can raise your hands, how many people have enjoyed working from home? Maybe not 5 days a week. Yeah, some in the middle, some in the middle. It's a spectrum. Work provides us with so much more than a place to sit at our desks. It provides us with team, with colleague, with learning, with mentoring, with being mentored, with a sense of purpose, with a place to bounce ideas, community. Work is not something that just gets done at a computer. The office and the future of the office needs to be a place where people collaborate, where they innovate, where they communicate. It's a place where people connect with other human beings, and that may not be, going forwards, that may not be people from as much from their own organisation, but with others. So co-working, as we know here in the Melting Pot, has the opportunity for lots of cross-pollination to happen. And now that the new future of work will be far more mobile and distributed, we have the possibility for all sorts of synergistic developments to occur between different organisations who would never previously have considered co-locating, but we have an opportunity to make that strong. We know that the COVID has damaged certain industries. Co-working is one. There's co-working hubs all over the world closing, opening and closing actually over the last few months, opening, closing, opening, closing. And I think that the organisations that I've been speaking to that are in the pipeline are in a fantastic position because they're not incurring the costs of being open. They've just got to get open and then capture the market that is had its awareness raised. So that's a good thing. The shift in the workplace from being that central HQ where everybody checked into our central office, I think it's an exciting opportunity to give employees a lot more freedom and flexibility and trust. But that's going to take quite a massive cultural shift beyond the initial pandemic, panic stages of the pandemic. We've actually got to learn as organisations to do remote work. And we don't, we're still learning that. Hands up hands up the people here are still learning how to work well remotely. Give me some feedback. Yeah, there's things we've learned, there's things that we're still going to learn. For instance, we're all used to being able to recruit staff and onboard them by them being physically located within an office with your team. So how is that going to happen in the future? How do you mentor staff? How do you check the quality of their work? How do you give them informal feedback when we're not in the same room together? There's lots to figure out. And spaces in the future will be designed in a way that not only allows people to feel safe and have walkthroughs, one-way walkthroughs, to have collaboration areas, and that could be just the informal coffee area, or teams to be able to come in instead of an individual hot desking. You may have an organisation hot officing. So maybe 1 day, 2 days, or a week of an office that's just purchased. It's the new meeting room. So there will be this need from employees of the future to have an alternative to working from home. Working from home is wonderful if it's by choice. but it's a killer if it isn't. And as an employer of the future, people are going to have to think about what's their package of support to their employees. How are they onboarding them? How do they get together and do social things, whether that's online and or virtual? Are they taking employees from across the world? If you've got the choice of having people provide you, for instance, with digital marketing services, does that person have to be located within 20 miles of your home base? Not anymore. But what does that mean for the future of the industry of people working? We know there's lots more freelancers and remote freelancers. But are we going to have a similar thing where, you know, buying coffee, we've got into fair trade coffee? Will we be looking for fair trade freelancers, where we can go, no, I'm going to take somebody who's working in a country that's got poorer economic conditions than my own country, but I want to make sure that they're paid a fair wage. Is it a race to the bottom? Is a question. I think that COVID has presented us with an opportunity to reinvent the workspace and what it's for. But I think good co-working hubs that I've witnessed over the last decade around the world have already been doing many of the things, not the hand sanitizing, many of the things that the future of the office is what people are talking about. You know, they provide spaces for collaboration, they provide learning opportunities, they're providing coaching, they're providing the conditions that generate glue and allow people to co-locate together. So I find myself kind of curious by conversations saying that, oh, the office isn't dead at all. The office is actually just going to be far more like a co-working hub. And not just flexible working, but all of the add-ons. Employers and organisations hiring space, whether that's an individual or a big corporate, are going to be looking not just for the nice interior design, but for the culture creation, the atmosphere, the connectivity, the added value thing that co-working hubs have done so well for so long, and that renting just an empty office somewhere is now going to be less attractive, shall we say, because people are going to be looking for more to give their staff to be able to attract, retain and develop their employees. And if we think about freelancers and people starting up companies, there's going to be a lot of people newly unemployed over the next few years, and we know history teaches us that that generates a new wave of startups. Those startups are going to value the flexibility, the connectivity, and the social capital and intellectual capital that can be generated in a good co-working hub. So again, it's a great time for co-working hubs in 2021. 2020 is a little bit rocky. 2021 is going to be a winner. So in terms of sort of closing thoughts, I had the image of a foal, you know, like a baby horse. And when a baby horse is really, really young, it's a bit struggly, it's a bit long-limbed and all over the place, basically. And I kind of feel that that is maybe what the office sector is going to be a little bit like when we come out of this pandemic, as will restaurants and all sorts of other industries that used to operate like this and now have to operate something else. We're going to be feeling our way and prototyping the types of services, culture, what is it that people are going to want from us, need from us and buy. So if we think about that foal, we've got to turn it into a stallion. How long is it going to take for the baby horse to grow up into something strong, sleek, powerful, with its own identity and culture? And I look forward to seeing Kinning Park, as well as the Melting Pot and others I know, become good racehorses and win this race. We're needed as part of the future. Co-working hubs are part of the recovery for the economy. We mustn't lose sight of all of the soft things, which are what is going to draw people back to an office. It's not an empty Airbnb type latch key thing, turn the key, walk in, there's your private office. You know, is that really what's going to help the economy grow? It might solve someone's pain for a day or two, it gives them space that's not at their table, but actually we have a really amazing opportunity to be part of the recovery and to build that better for our economies and our people. And at the end of the day, Co-working Hub is all about the people that it serves. I look forward to racing alongside you, Martin, and your team. Let's see if we can get to the next finishing line. Thank you.
Bravo, Claire. I was going to say, we've had some right good presentations as part of this series that we've done this week, but I don't think there's one that I wanted to actually give a standing ovation to. You've done a couple of things there which are, you know, supposedly impossible, which is to get people that are in part of a Zoom meeting to focus only on what's been said as opposed to like checking the election or whatever the hell else is going on in the background, and emotional connection. You know, I can't speak for everybody in the room, but certainly for me, and I don't know if that's amplified through, you know, the time and the space-time continuum in which this is taking place for you. But yeah, that was really fantastic. Before we break into breakout rooms, has anybody got any questions? Have you got a couple of minutes just for questions, Claire? Or
Yeah.
has anybody got any questions? Or tell Claire how amazing that was? That's also fine.
I was thinking, because I work for quite a big company, TUI, so it's a massive, and we're actually talking about viability of the company. And I sort of feel that they will, I think the mindset has been in our company, you work from an office, and I think a lot of these big companies will, as soon as this is all over, they may start drifting back into expecting, and of course there will be, well, me particularly, I quite like working some of the time at home, not all the time, but I just think when you have a big like corporate companies, do you think they'll just go back to how it was before, rather than taking these new, looking ahead more and taking, changing how they work?
No, I think the genie's out the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
You've got individuals who have compromised immune systems or who are looking after people who are compromised, and they will choose not to go back to an office. They'll choose to work from home more often than not. They'll limit their time going to you. And if it's been proven, as it has, that people can work from home and they can do so productively, certainly on the short term, the question is how long term can we be productive?
I think that's the main problem, is the long term. I think a lot of young people coming into work, it's so tough. And we've got a few, I mean, at my age, I'm pretty experienced. I can work from home. I pick up, I can carry on working quite easily. But I think people just starting out at work who like maybe started work in February, just before we all locked down, they are really struggling, and they're not picking up the skills. They're not picking up to do the job. And I think a lot of them are just treading water at the moment, and their careers have just come to a bit of a grinding halt. So I just feel very sorry for them. So hopefully, if we're saying we can't go back to the office full time, this sort of co-work, the co-work thing could sort of bear almost training sort of for trainees or young people getting together, really. I feel very, very sorry for them all, really, because I think their careers are having a bit of a hit.
It's going to be really difficult. There's loads, but the other thing is they're going to teach us skills that us oldies don't know. They're going to be digitally literate. They're not going, is this working yet?
No, that's true.
But corporates are already getting rid of their floor prints. They're already releasing, my understanding is that they're releasing up, most big organisations are giving up to a third of their office space back. That's a strategic decision. It's going to take time to play out in the marketplace. But our cities are going to be reinvented. Our towns are going to be reinvigorated. And there's going to be neighbourhoods of cities that are going to be buggered. And that could include the city centre. Edinburgh, I was looking at statistics yesterday for Edinburgh as a city centre. It is going to be really tough.
Central London is just nothing. No one's travelling into central London at all, really, like city-wise. It's just dead.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Thank you.
And showing that oldies forget to unmute there. Thanks very much for that question, Caroline. And thanks for the answer, Claire. Anybody else got anything that they would like to kind of raise? All right, if it's okay then, I'm sorry, on you go, Claire.
And this is just to satisfy me. Can I invite you to see our ending? You're at a beginning. Can I just take you and show you our end? Is that okay? So hijack, Martin. Where are you? I've lost you. Is that, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Because one thing I've learned today, decals, the sticky things that you put on windows or whatever, they're an absolute bugger to get off. Be careful how many you put up. Just going to show you. So, the end. Look at all those floor patches. Yeah. It's only a transition. As I said, it's a very expensive address change. So.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. As I say, we're really privileged to have a chance to share in your thoughts, especially on a day like today. And I mentioned to folks that it's something that that we'll be taking the time to go into deeper later on in the year as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that too.
Brilliant. It's great to see the building progress. Buildings are there to be utilised to make stuff happen in. Kinning Park Complex was a school. Now it's been something else, and it's going to become something else. We're just caretakers ultimately. What are we going to take care of? Thank you for letting me play a part of your journey.
No worries, mate. See you soon.
All right, ciao, ciao. Take care.
Claire, do you want to, Claire's with no eye, KPC Claire, do you want to fire us into, we go into 2 rooms now?
Yeah, just split everybody up into 2 groups of 5.
Alison and Janine, you're both from the same organisation, right? Do you want to be in the same room, or do you want to, no, Alison.
She clearly has enough of me on Zoom daily.
Threatened, or which one is it? I'll just sick. So I mean, I think we'll randomise it, but if you end up in the same room, the easiest thing is to leave the breakout room and then
You're in separate rooms as I've set it up just now.
Oh, is that the email that Janine sent earlier on?
Yeah, I was told specifically.
All right, cool. Right, see you on the other side, folks. If anybody, if there's anything that folks want to chat about, we can hang about. We're always like, do we extend this or do we wrap it up? And the other thing is as I mentioned before, we'd be really happy, whether you've got an intention to be based in the Kinning Park complex, whether you don't, or you've got your own space, or whatever it is. We think that learning experience will be much stronger if we go through it together. So one of the things we were asking, if somebody wants to be part of those facilitated discussions, please ping your name to Claire in the chat, and we'll get back in touch and look about setting up a session or 2, so that we can all do that together. And as I say, it's not limited to who can come along. Sarah, were you facilitating one of those rooms? Is that how that was going?
No, I passed that to Becca. I got let off the hook.
Oh, aye, Sarah's officially on holiday, and so Becca, is there anything? Anything that you or anyone else from your room would take?
Yeah, so I think we were talking about like what we want from an office. We kind of put 1 and 2 together a bit. I think a lot of that was really about the things that we miss, or the things we want to go back to, or the things that we want to see in offices. All about the informal. It's all about finding those moments to like speak to people. And Zoom is so formal, and you have to plan a meeting or a 5-minute chat. Like there's no point of just like leaning across and going, can we just talk about this or draw this? And particularly maybe for me, I find that very difficult because we do a lot of drawing. But like, yeah, the informal, the water cooler, the and remembering what we actually do. We all have jobs that include some form of practical output, and we haven't been able to do that. necessarily in the same way, or we've been doing that at a remove. So I think trying to getting back to the spaces that we're in so that we can remember exactly what we do. And then I guess that really then leads into the what we think KPC should provide for people who are in the space would really be like, how do we design the physical space for accidental meetings? How do we allow for those things while keeping safe and while doing all the things? How do we, create the spaces where someone bumps into someone else and that's really useful? Like, what are the points that we need to, or that KPC needs to focus on to make sure that those accidental meetings can happen in a way that's valuable to the people having it?
Mm. Really interesting. I hadn't thought about it. Kirsty had mentioned in our group about, the one of the downsides of open plan offices being the noise and the visual distraction and needing spaces to get your head down, which I think's always been in the thinking. But when I hear that, I wonder, can people imagine doing their head down work in the office anymore? Or is that the sort of thing that you think you'd want to do at home and then come into the office for something else? I don't know that there's an answer to that. I don't know if you've got a thought. I know that yours is around developers and designers, Kirsty, but what do you think to that question?
For the type of industries that I work in, it would make sense to do that type of stuff at home and only come in, or wherever your home office is, and only come into a shared space when it's collaborative working. But then I suppose that relies on going along the hot desk or hot office plan, and that people wouldn't be just working solely from KPC. But I don't think that's how it would be set up.
If I'm being honest, I think we probably need to go with a mix or something. So when we've been looking at co-working plans before, we've, for a number of different reasons, been looking at different kinds of spaces. And sometimes it's been like, no, I want a fixed desk because I want to be there all the time. Or I want to have the possibility to come in as much as I want or as little as I want, and other spaces where you're like, no, I just want to be in 2 days a week. And so partly I think when we're looking at, smaller new businesses or social enterprises or, small community organisations, they maybe don't have the capacity or the need, to have a space 5 days a week. So I think we definitely need to offer some stuff, which is whether you just want to come in 2 days a week, because actually, it might also be that you're working for another organisation and a lot of the time you need to do that collaboration with them. And you might be doing that from home, or you might be doing that from their HQ or their hub, but the other 2 days a week or one of those days, actually, you still don't want to be at home, and so whether it's affordability or suitability or whatever, I think we're going to have to try and offer a bit of all of it, if that makes sense. We've got like smaller offices that can be private offices, bigger offices that could be private or could be shared. And I think the other thing that's in the back of our mind is being, if you are an HQ, before maybe we would have thought an HQ needs to have enough space to have everybody there. But are you saying, well, actually we're a small, or we're a 20-person team, but what we want is desk space for 8. 4 of those folks might be in all the time, 4 of those folks might be in rotation, and every so often actually we'd like to have access to a bigger space, or a couple of spaces that can be set up for a bit of, kind of team working that we might do once a week, once a month, once a fortnight, something like that. So I think, we need to get a move on a wee bit and think about what we're going to do in those spaces, but we'll probably start with offering a mix and then adapting it as we go along, I think.
I'm going to have to leave now, but thanks very much. And
no worries, Caroline.
yeah, I'll keep up to date with your project. Okay, bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Anybody else from Becca's group want to share anything or that was there? I think then, if that's all right, because I am conscious of the time, we didn't really get to the last question, but some of the things that we were talking about was we're looking forward to having that kind of clear demarcation of this is my time for work or this is my space for work. So the boundaries was something that people were looking forward to, and just as that happened, my mum turned up chatting at the door. Do you know what I mean? So it was like perfectly timed. Having an actual space to work in, as opposed to being at your kitchen table or your living room table, or in some cases sitting on your bed with a laptop, which 9 months in cannot be fun. I mean, 9 hours in, that's not fun anymore either. and also having like colleagues or comrades as well, right? Because it also might not be necessarily just folks from your work if you're in a shared workspace, but having the chance to band together and be like, no, what we do is we always go out to somewhere of an evening, or we've got a running group, or little things that you can use to motivate you because there's other folks around that can get on that sort of stuff as well. And there was questions in terms of changed expectations about whether the kind of open plan office is something that we want to go back to, with the idea that the visual stimulation and the noise is problematic, and some interesting questions about how do we make an office customizable, so that it can be set up at different ways for different needs, or we've got different tasks, we can find different spaces to retreat into when we kind of need to do those tasks. But we all really identified that what hasn't changed is the need for community, and that flexibility going forward is probably going to be important because people are going to find themselves in a lot of different situations. But also folks might not necessarily be able to afford the same office costs over the next couple of years, and spaces which can offer things which are affordable will be attractive to people as well. And we also talked a little bit about the fact that communication technology is going to be important. So, what the physical technology for people who will be able to have meetings. So if you were in an open plan office space, probably Zoom and stuff like that is going to be something which is going to be part of your office life for the next wee while. Will we go back to going all the way to Edinburgh for a half an hour meeting, or will we just have a quick Zoom with somebody? So you couldn't necessarily do that in an open plan office. You'd maybe want a little bit of privacy. And what I picked up on as well is that the knowledge around how to use different technologies could be something that could be quite valuable as well. And as always, if we're bringing people with different cultures, different experiences together, what we're going to need is clear rules, clear codes of conduct and rules and expectations. And everybody told me that wasn't aimed at you, Becca. I don't know if there's anything else that folks kind of want to say or comment on off the back of any of that, especially my group, if I've maybe missed something out or something else you'd like to highlight.
If there's no one from your group, Martin, I was just had a wee thought when you were presenting there, this idea of having a space which is adaptable for what you need that day. And I think somewhere that does that really well is universities, and in particular the Saltire Centre at Caledonian University. So there's different spaces, whether you're studying solo, or if you're doing group work, or if you're just really there to hang out or make yourself believe that you're there to study. I think that the layout of that is maybe one to have a wee nosy at.
Yeah, okay, happy days. The Saltire Centre at Cali?
That's it, yeah. I think the design company was called Curious Orange, but they're not together anymore. But the Saltire Centre is still there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been in there before for something else, and the way I know it's a bigger space, but the way they've laid it out with sort of pods that you can almost disappear into, but the pods are big enough to have a group meeting and to roll out a bit of paper and then all co-design on something is spot on. So I mean, that kind of furniture is not cheap, but if there's a way of getting something like that built, or I don't know, reappropriated from somewhere else, that would be amazing.
And they're the sort of things that I kind of sometimes think about in terms of in the middle of, because some of our studio spaces up the stairs are pretty big, and there's a lot of space in the middle, and so it's I think what I can't understand is that how much do you bring it all into one space? Do you just go, actually the whole top floor is one space, and actually rather than being like, there's your desk in room A, do you know what I mean, in the corner, are you going like, actually there's all these desks, do you know what I mean, batter in and go wherever you want, because all the spaces are connected by doors as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as, I've had this conversation with Martin a lot, as long as the edges don't move, what happens in the middle could change, but the edges are fixed. So Martin's not allowed to move them anymore. So I think it's that, like, yeah, it's that balance of like, what can you do with furniture? What can you do with like bespoke pieces? What can you do with, yeah, just creating, as you say, they're all connected. You could view them as one space rather than viewing them as three separate studios, which is how we've kind of viewed them, and that would be down to keying doors, like a really boring answer. If we key the doors right, then we can do that, or we can think about it in a different way. So yeah, that balance of furniture to space, I think, is going to be interesting for those rooms.
Yeah, I'll just need to keep out the quiet room.
It's not for you. You're not allowed in there. It's got a particular use, and its use is not Martin's office.
Oh, I didn't mean that quiet room. I mean whatever room that people aren't supposed to talk in.
Right, yes, okay.
Anything else folks would like to... Hayden saying that the Barbican Centre did a good overhaul of their internal wayfinding system, Becca. And
it's really beautiful. I have, it's kind of on our list, but I've got to get some really decent photos of it. My sister lives nearby, so I'm going to ask her to go and take some photos of me for me when it opens again.
Happy days. Well, I take that as a hint for Janine that probably we should look at wrapping up. But I just want to say thanks very much for coming along, and we will put the recording of this up online, and if follow us, if you're not already following us on the socials, then you'll definitely get some more information about other stuff which is coming up as well. And so thanks very much for coming along. It's been really interesting and giving us a lot to think about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Cheerio.
Yeah.